Hi everyone, I'm the plant propagator and welcome to my channel. Today is not a great day in the garden, in my orchid growing space. So it has been raining here for the past few days a lot, and so I haven't been able to get out and see my orchids very well. I do sneak out and take a look, and it's been raining a lot, it's hot, and even though I try to take care of my plants as best as I can, you deal with issues and you deal with loss of orchids. And I just wanted to share some of that with you. I try to be an optimist, but it's hard to look at the loss of orchids in any positive way. What I have is just a lot of cases of what appears to be black rot in these small seedlings right here, and these were some nice seedlings, and then also in these larger plants right here. These plants were all in my orchid pergola, and the problem with the plants, my plants in my pergola, is that there's so many of them together and they're stacked in there kind of one on top of the other, and what happens is pathogens tend to be transferred back and forth between plants just really effectively when they're so crowded and they're on top of each other. Before it rained, I was thinking, okay, it's gonna rain, what can I do? And so I actually did apply a fungicide to all of my orchids before the rain came in. I didn't do it, intentionally because of the rain. It just so happened I had the timing so that I applied a fungicide a week before the rain came, and this was good stuff. It's supposed to control this. Black rot, I should say, is caused by a couple of different fungi. Maybe it's Phytophthora, which, if I have any colleagues watching that are pathologists, I call it a fungus. It's an omycete. It's not a fungus. Different classification. I apologize for that. Just on the record, just so you know, I'm going to be calling it all fungi. Even though that's not what its formal classification is. But for the purposes today, it's a fungus. And so I have, this fungus, or this omycete, is spread, and normally what happens on this is that you have it's black rot, and normally, as you can see from here, it's on the leaves, and then you can usually take your instrument, and I've been doing this a lot today in the past few days. You flame your instruments pretty carefully, shown like I'm doing here, and then right below where the black rot, where you see the black rot forms, you essentially cut it off. So on this one, if I were to try to save this plant, I can see there's a big spot going down this far, and I cut right below it. And so here's my leaf, but the problem with this plant is that it's all over the place, and the problem, so I don't think, and this is a seedling, and it's in some of the new pseudobulbs that are growing out. I don't think this is salvageable, which is too bad, but it's a seedling, so I have more of it. This one is just totally rotted, and this is again another one of my seedlings, and it just falls apart. So these are the leaves just come right off because of the rot. And what happens, what I'm doing here, so as I pull this apart, I have a little container here on the ground that I use for all my nasty orchid residues. So these are all going to go in here. Sometimes the potting mix, depending what the potting mix is, I keep it and then I autoclave it and reuse it. And I like to do that. The other thing is, I'm looking at this pot, I was telling you that I did a fungicide application, a liquid application of fungicide, but I also use a systemic granular fungicide on my orchids. Now, obviously this stuff isn't working 100%, or these plants would be doing okay, but I can see I have Nutricoat in here that I can see that's the big balls of gray stuff in there, and then I have some small granular gray stuff, and that's the fungicide. So I know I applied it to these plants, but and what happens in that case is it's taken up by the plant and it's supposed to protect it. But you have to be careful with the fungicide that you use to make sure that it works on orchids. But the other thing is there are different fungicides that work on different fungi. So if you have Phytophthora, black rot, you use one type. If you have other types of fungal pests, you use other types. So there's all different types of fungicides that you can use, and I just do the best I can, and obviously in this case it wasn't good enough. So these plants, these seedlings, and I have plenty of both of these, so these seedlings, look at that nice, that's disappointing. Look at that nice root system. You know, maybe salvageable, but it's just, I'm going to be, once you have this stuff gets into your plant, you're going to be battling it for the life of the plant. Sometimes it can get around it, and I'll show you some of that in a little bit. So keep my tag, dead. Here's another one. I'm sure it's the same thing. What a great root system. See, not even the root system wasn't even rotting, but the plant is just, it's just gone. So anyway, sometimes it's actually, if you can afford to do this, as I can, because I have many duplicates of these two seedlings, that's the best thing to do, is to toss it, dispose of it properly, and move on. The other story that I have to share is the same pathogen, the same pest, and this is right here. And this is sad because this is, these are divisions of Cornelia calipana, which I had. It was a huge plant, beautiful plant growing well. It's a really old variety, and the plant was getting too big for its basket, so I split it, and I split it into 4. One I lost early on. This is 2, 3. The 4th one looks just as bad, and it's behind me. And what happens on this is that, again, once this stuff gets into the rhizome, into the root system on this plant, your chances are very low of getting anything to happen. So I'm going to pull this plant out. I've got this in here, and again, I have these orchids in. There's no way this is going to live, but we'll just see what I do. So it's all black, and when I say that, it's because the base of this plant is all black. You know, it looks like some of these roots might have been okay. This pseudobulb, it's completely shriveled. It's not black, but I think it probably will be soon. So this is all that's left of this plant, and let me pull this out and see what's left of this plant. And this is the same. It looks like the same situation with this plant, because I have the, you know, and I got rid of most of the root system, but the newest, I might get something out of this. Yeah, I might get something out of this. So this pseudobulb right here is just black at the top, and this is a new pseudobulb that grew out. And it's black, and then it goes down, and it goes down to the base, where the base is also black. And I'm going to remove some, just to make sure, I'm going to remove some of this, because what you want to do, if you're going to try to salvage these plants, what you're going to do is clean them up as much as possible, let them dry out, and then you may get a new pseudobulb that'll grow out of it. So this one, you know, this one, it looks like the black doesn't go all the way down to the base of this newest pseudobulb, which may mean that I can save this. Now, again, normally you don't worry about saving these plants because it's just, you know, it's just so black, and you're pretty much dealing with a lost cause. And if you can get more, that's fine. But this is an old plant that I haven't seen anywhere else. I got it from an orchid growing colleague. So what I'm going to do with this plant, I don't remember if I flamed this recently or not, but what I'm going to do with this plant is flame these instruments. What a lot of people do when they're flaming it, when I'm flaming the instruments, I don't have multiple shears here. I have one nice pair that I use for my orchids, and what I see a lot of people do is they flame the instruments. They flame them like 10 of them, and they put them in their containers, and they go back and they get them so they don't have to flame in between. But what I'm going to do is cut this off, this bad pseudobulb, and you can feel it. Just so you know, in this area that is black, it's soft. So this is gone for a few reasons. And then what I do is I cut it back, and I look to see in the cut area if it's brown. And if it's brown, you got to keep on cutting, and it is brown. So, yeehaw! So what I'll need to do, flame it again and dig down a little more. And again, normally, this is overkill to do this. Normally you don't really need, you shouldn't really do this. You just kind of get rid of the plant, and I'm going to be a lot more aggressive with this next cut. Okay, and this next cut, what happened on it is, and I'll get a close-up image of this, is the majority of this is clean. There's a little bit of black that may be associated with it, but the majority of it is clean. And so what I might be able to do is save this piece and get new pseudobulbs, or new eyes to form where it still might be green, and I can see there might be one right here. So I may be able to take this tiny little piece and get a new plant just to maintain and conserve the genetics that this offers. Okay, and I'm going to try. This is not gonna. This other piece is just not going to work. It only has 2 pseudobulbs on it. This is the one the new one that's rotten. This is the old one, and I can see the base of the old one is, even though it has a leaf on it, it's starting to brown. But I may hold on to it anyway. Okay, what do I mean when I say hold on to it? What I do is I take these things, I trim off, and let me do this now. You trim off the roots, and lots of flaming going on here. You trim off all the roots, and then these are orchids, and orchids are tough, and you just let them, I let them sit actually in an open pot in my garden. And what happens if you get lucky and you let things dry out, it's dry, but then it still gets rained on, and it gets, it still gets some stuff, some moisture to it. So what happens eventually, if you're lucky, is you get a new eye that forms, and you get new growth that comes out of this. And then you got to be a little bit careful with it. All right, so what does that look like? And essentially, I have just taken all the roots off of this, destroyed it. All there are is a couple of pseudobulbs here. And you can peel back, and what I'll also do is kind of wash it a little bit, but there's not much here. This is what I have. This is nothing. I've taken, and it's really shriveled up, so I've taken pieces like this and shoved them in my in my date palm tree, and I've had them grow. And also what I have is I've taken pieces like this. One of my most favorite plants, one of my oldest plants, is called Mishima Victory. And I had Mishima Victory the huge flower, beautiful, fragrant, classical cattleya. I put it in a big pot, and the pot was too big, and it was not in a good location. I put it under my pergola, and it got dripped on, again, from the pathogens that were in the top that may not have killed the plants at the top, but certainly were spreading. Got into my Mishima victory. I should also mention that this type of disease and this type of rotting is the cattleyas are really prone to this. And I have mostly cats in my collection. All right, so I did this a while ago with Mishima Victory, where it was the same type of thing that I had a few pseudobulbs, some in many cases without leaves, and I just put them again in an open pot, no potting mix, just in my area, in my garden area. And then what happened is I got regrowth. So this was something, this was a bigger, there were essentially 4 pseudobulbs associated with this, but 2 eyes on 2 of the pseudobulbs started forming, and this took months for this to occur. So, and you got to be careful, you can't be too quick to pot these things up. So I kept them in a very airy mix. This is just lava stone and large leca, and I'm getting growth. So this is a new growth here, this is a new growth here, this new pseudobulb, I just looked at it today, and there's another eye that looks like I'm going to get another pseudobulb growing out of it. So but you can see on this plant where there were some everything that was cut off, where you can see the old eyes and the old parts of the plant that rotted. So here's one piece of that. Here's another piece of it. And this is even sadder right here. So this was the thing, again, there were 4 pseudobulbs with no leaves on it, and then I got an eye to grow out of it. Again, I had these things just sitting. I only potted them up, I only mounted them like this after the eye started to expand and after it became a pseudobulb. So this one, and I'll get some close-ups of this, so this one just started expanding and growing. And this thing was really badly rotted. And so what I did in order to prevent, and there's probably residual fungus that's in there, but rather than shove this in a potting mix, don't want to put it in bark, but even you got to be careful with leca. But rather than shove this one into a potting mix, what I did is I just shoved it on a board. There's no roots that are attaching this to the board. Right now it's just attached with a rubber band, but it has some roots that are growing out of the back of it. They're not even attached. No, they're not even attached to the board yet. They're just starting to grow, but this is how I am attempting to rescue some plants that you just can't get anymore. Now, ideally what you do is you divide them, you keep 2 of them, 1 dies, you're okay. But here I divided this into 3, and all 3 pieces succumb to this disease. So it doesn't matter what kind of planting you do. You know, this, I would have been stuck, you know, anyway I would have gone on this, and that's too bad. But you know, this is kind of what happens. I don't want to paint always a rosy picture of what goes on in my garden and what happens to my orchids. I do have a lot of phenomenal growth in the orchids around me. I'm excited. I've got new blooms, first blooms that are out, that I'm gonna wait a little bit in order to do a video on that. But what happens in some cases is that you lose. So I have 4 that I lost today that I have to toss. Now I'll take some more of my seedlings and do these. I cleared out some space so I can expand into that if I need, and I do need to, because I got so many orchids coming. And like I say, I try to be an optimist, and the only good thing about this is now that I have more space for other orchids that I can bring in. But it really is sad to lose these things, but it's just a fact of orchid growing. Now, everyone has this happen to them. I'm still learning how to grow orchids. But you know, the thing is, when I look back at it, I don't think I would do anything differently. I wouldn't know what to do differently. Some people have told me that what I need to do in my pergola in that space, because there's so many orchids in there, is to get a fan. You know, an indoor-outdoor 24-hour on fan, which means that I would have to run electricity from the house to my pergola, put it in there. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to have fans all, you know, in my backyard. You gotta count on the breezes doing something. And so what I'm just going to do is deal with these things and move on. And there's other things that I could have done, but you know, I did apply fungicide as a spray and a systemic. I try to keep things open. Once I see that there's, you know, pathogen invasion starting, I move those plants about and either try to rescue them or sequester them. I have a sick place in behind me that I put my orchids that need to be removed from everything else to prevent spread. So I try to do things right, but I can't think of how I would have done anything differently. I flame. Oh my gosh, I flame so much. And it just happens. And so that's all I wanted to share with you today. I hope you enjoyed my video today. If you did, if you have some suggestions on additional things I could do, please put those in the comments. If you want to send me your sympathies, you can do that too. That's fine. But again, I just felt I wanted to share some of these tragic losses with you. So anyway, that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. If you did and you want to keep on seeing them, it would help me out if you can click on like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you're not already a subscriber. All right, that's all I have for today. Again, I hope you enjoyed it, and happy propagating.